Good afternoon. This is Jim Whitehead of All Power Group and Phoenix Animal, and today I am with my second channel, Power Coffee News. And what we're going to talk about today is, and there's so many topics, so many interesting things, but this is where I'm going to bring you through a relatively short presentation on how I became a coffee roaster. I know some people say I started drinking coffee. Most people don't say I started drinking coffee and then over time I became a coffee roaster. I know it's kind of like, it's not necessarily the journey that you follow, but I did. Okay, let's start. Okay. My wife said, because I had been drinking, nothing against Coke, but I had been drinking Diet Coke or Coke Zero for literally, oh my God, 30 years. And I'd have anywhere from, it was 4 at one time in the morning as my caffeine source. And then I did cut it down to 2, but she kept saying, Jam, this stuff isn't really good for you. And it isn't where you dislike it. It's just, it's not where you say, wow, this is wonderful. But we all like to have a drink to basically wake up in the morning. So what my wonderful wife, her name is 24, she said, look, let me make you a cup of coffee. And I had actually had coffee, let's say in the 80s, because I'm not a young person. As you probably know, I'm 76 now. And I just didn't think coffee was good, because I was used to the day of when you'd have coffee on top of and not picking on bun, but where it'd be in a carafe per se, and you'd basically pour it. And if you drank it straight, unless you just loved bitter, bad tasting coffee, you would say, no, this isn't very good. And you'd end up putting a lot of sugar. And back then they had Cremora, which was fake cream, and you'd say, I just don't get it. I'm not sure why people are drinking this. So when she made this cup of coffee, it was amazing. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe what I have missed all this time. So the neat thing is that started my journey. One little side story. When I first started drinking coffee, I think it was approximately 2017, I went to I was a Generac generator company, and I went to a dealer meeting in Orlando, Florida. And I remember the first morning I got up, getting ready to go and watch the presentations. And I said, well, since I'm not drinking Coke anymore, I'm going to go and get a cup of coffee. So I walked up to the counter, and I was like, oh no, I don't know what to order. I mean, if you think about it, if you're one that drinks Diet Coke or Coke Zero, you just open it up and you drink it. There's nothing you have to do or think about other than it's a caffeine source. So I know the lady came up to me and said, okay, what do you want? Do you want an Americano? Do you want a latte? Do you want and I was like, I don't even know what I really want, because I don't really, and then had not drank coffee very much. So she said, okay, what about an Americano? I said, I guess because I'm American, that would fit, right? And she said, do you want hazelnut? Do you want vanilla? do you want, and it was like, I had no clue. And I said, look, ma'am, I just haven't drank coffee before, so I don't really know the structure, what I need to say, what I need to do. So she was nice and she helped me out. And I went, well, that's a good start. So that was that point. I then said, this coffee thing is amazing. And I started buying, my first coffee maker was a Keurig, and I will do a presentation on all my different coffee machines that I picked up. But anyway, the point is, what this is representing is I get so passionate about wanting to know everything about coffee. So that's me. Every night when I had free time, I would be studying the origins of coffee, you name it. And I almost, where I didn't look and study anything else during that time. It was about a year. And yeah, my generator business was good. I was over in the Davie, Florida area, which is Broward County, a little north of Dade County. And I said, I don't necessarily need another business right now, because my generator business was what I would call a 6-day-a-week job or more. And, what I would do is service generators, fix generators, install generators. But when I get so involved in getting to understand coffee and everything, I told my wife, I said, honey, I would like to start a coffee business. Now, I know she, at the time, probably said, you already have a business. And I was like, well, maybe, because at that time I was probably about 67 years old. And admittedly, the generator business, due to being in South Florida and the heat, I was like, I can maybe develop this business and have it where I do coffee roasting. And I know, God bless her, she's probably like, oh, here we go again. But because I do like starting businesses, but I do recognize you can't keep starting them and not have the time to develop them. So anyway, that's again me studying every day, every night, every day, every night. Now, this was my first coffee roaster. It's called a Jean Cafe. And it fits the concept of, and when I get into other presentations, getting into different types of roasters, this is what we would call a drum roaster. And that drum in the middle there, the black portion, basically turns. So the beans are flipping over, and you set the temperature, as you can see down below, and how fast it goes, and you would just keep watching it, and the beans start out as what we call green beans. And by the way, I used to get my green beans from a company called Genuine Origin, still around, and you would buy, and this is still what they do, but you would buy bags, very nice bags of what coffee you would like to buy from many of the different coffee growing areas, including Ethiopia, Sumatra, Vietnam, Hawaii, Jamaica. And, I would keep that refrigerated in a room that had air conditioning, and you keep it sealed because the thing with beans, they're precious, and if you're not careful, you can either ruin them or have it where they get stale because, again, you're storing them incorrectly. So anyway, my first roast in a building that was attached to my home, luckily we had this big garage door, and this area was air conditioned, but it was where I'm going to be doing my very first roast. And I kept letting it roast and letting it turn and all of a sudden I you just don't know. And this is how you learn in a lot of cases the hard way. And all of a sudden my wife comes out, she says, "Are you burning something?" And I went, "Oops, I kept the beans in the heat too long." And as you learn from me, you start out, and there's basically three different color roasts and everything in between, but one is what we call a light roast. And I would definitely say what you're looking at is probably a light roast. And by the way, after I burnt those beans, I had to throw them out and then start it again. But you say, well, I'm not going to keep making the same mistake. So what you're seeing now is pretty much the beans in a light roast mode. And what happens is, as coffee continues, you have to watch the color, you have to watch the temperature, and you have to watch the time. And what a coffee will do is a lot of different things, but one is what we call it cracks. Now, the first crack, and it smells like popcorn, it sounds like popcorn popping. But the first crack, you'll hear cracking noise, and you say, okay, I'm at first crack. So if you pull the roast, you can tell from color, but it's going to be in the range of a light to a medium roast. Your choice. Now, the last roast that if you keep going, you will go into, and the beans you can tell will start getting darker, and you will then go into what we call second crack. Kind of a little sounding different than the first crack, but very, very obvious. And in some cases, I even had to use a microphone so I could really hear the cracking. When you get to second crack, you're getting, or are at a what we call a dark roast. And the beans will look much darker, almost what you can see behind me. Now, what's happening with that is you've got to be very careful, because a dark roast right after second crack, you really need to make sure, as we would say, pull the roast so you don't keep going. And I had one of my, when I was selling the beans as I progressed, and you'll see what equipment I went to turn it into more of a commercial opportunity, that this particular person would say, I want a dark roast. The darker, the better. Now, I didn't like doing them, but when a customer says this is what I want, okay, that's what we do. So what we would get into is when it starts to get into time fit issues and temperature can help you really kind of figure out, where you are when you get to second crack and how much you go beyond that. I was always afraid that I would go, and I'm talking 30 seconds, a minute more, And now you could very well get into that same situation I said when I did my first roast on the Gene Cafe. You burn the beans, and they will not be sellable, or somebody would definitely not like it by any means. So that's the what we have to make sure we do here. Now, as I progressed, because the Gene Cafe, in fact, because see, I sold the equipment because when I left Davie, Florida, came over here to Naples, I sold all my equipment. And shame on me, I should not have. But, hindsight is better than looking ahead, and you're saying, oh, you got to move all this stuff. So, I can understand. But what I said, okay, I do want to turn this into a business. And that's when you need to get into, if we can call it a commercial roaster. And there are basically two types. One is called fluid bed, and that is what you're looking at. That's a fluid bed roaster made by Coffee Crafters, and they were great supporting me on getting everything set up, because there's a lot of, besides what you see, there's a lot of equipment you need. A blower to have air going through the system, good, the proper amount of power. This was, I think, 30 amps, 240 volt. That's what they call 220 if you want, if for people that want to know. But here you see, and I really am a fluid bed person. The beans are in that container or canister or device, and what it's doing is you're putting air up through, and you're lofting the beans. And one of the settings would be how much air you're putting through, and there would be, a point of either too high of a loft or too low of a loft. And, again, you got to get used to doing it right. A typical, I could roast up to 3 pounds on each roast, and you can see in the lower left, you're not seeing it real well, but I would monitor, besides knowing what the temperature is, I would monitor with these two monitor systems on the left there that would tell me what the temperature of the beans are, what the temperature of the roaster is. I would even have it where it would tell me what room temperature was, because again, if it's 80 degrees in the room or 75 degrees in the room, that in itself will affect the roast, because you're in an environment that has some additional temperature. So I was able to watch the amount of time, watch the level in the sense of either Fahrenheit or centigrade or Celsius. I mean, in the United States, we're not metric in most cases except medical, and we're used to Fahrenheit. And typically, beans, if you want them to be a good medium roast, you need to go up to about 400 on this device. They're all different. You got to get used to them. I would go to about 405 degrees, and I had a computer that's more over to the left that you can't see, and it would have a curve showing the rise of the bean temperature and the time. And I would know, and again, looking at the color and the smell. So, I mean, you have to have good senses to basically get to where you need to go. Now, as you see also in the picture is my business at the time called Roasting Expectations, and that was my logo, and I called them Bright Coffee Beans. I love lighthouses. But bottom line, that was how I would package the coffee And of course, my note to the customer saying thank you, yada, yada, yada. Now, I never was able to progress into a full-time business because I was still in the generator business full-time plus. But what I would do is I would roast coffee like this, because you're learning, and I would actually give them, the bags. Those are about pound bags. A lot of times they're 12 ounces, 1 pound, sometimes 2 pounds, 5 pounds. And so I would actually give it to my generator customers. I say, do you like coffee? Oh, yeah, I love coffee. How do you like your coffee? So I would basically make it for them and give it to them. I know I'm a big entrepreneur, and anyway, it was just where we're going. And then probably I know I would be in the coffee roasting business is if we stayed in Davie. But we moved over here in 2023, and we've progressed into where maybe, if the money is right down the road, that I will go in the roasting again. And the good news is, yes, I am a content creator on YouTube, but I would have the time to roast beans. And one good source of sales is, and of course, now when it starts getting cooler in Florida, October through, let's say, April, they have a lot of farmers markets. So you can say, well, we got a farmers market on Saturday. I'm going to roast a bunch of beans, package them, and go and sell them at the coffee. Now, at the time, I know, and it's funny how if you change businesses, you say, wow, I was making very good money in the generator business. And I knew that selling coffee, it wouldn't be, you might make $2 a bag of coffee when you're selling them, maybe less, maybe a little bit more. But it was like, wow, this isn't where I can say, okay, I'm going to stop the generator business and I'm going to make enough money to make up for what I'm not going to get from the generator business. And it was like, ooh, it's not ready yet. And then, good or bad, we decided to move. And there goes the roasting business. So I hope I can do another one. Anyway. So that's pretty much my story. I've written a book, Journey Through the World of Coffee. You're seeing, that's one of the, on the, a little bit to the left of me, you see one of the commercial coffee grinders. And you'll find as I work with you on beans, you don't want to grind your beans immediately at all. One, you don't do anything for 3-4 days because they have to off gas, as we call it. And after 3 or 4 days, you keep them in a protected container that does not let air in, just it lets nitrogen, which the beans give off for about 3 or 4 days. And with the air not being able to get in, the coffee will stay as fresh as it can be. And the bags are special. They're sealed real well. And again, you don't keep them in a high temperature. So anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this. And I'm always here to basically help you learn either the generator business or the coffee business or being a content creator. It's all good. And again, as you get older, you say, well, and as I said, when I started having issues, I'm 76 now, but at 67, I started having trouble with the heat. You'd go out, because I'd be out all day. And, the temperatures down here are terrible in the summer, and they've gotten worse. So, it would be very hard to stay out all day as you progressed and became older. Boy, I'll tell you, enjoy, because I know people that are 35 think, I'm never going to get old. Well, here we are. 35 plus years later, and it's okay. But anyway, thank you for watching this episode of Power Coffee News. And if you can, I only have one subscriber, so if you can, please subscribe. I'd really, really appreciate it. Now, stay well, and remember, we just have to kind of stick together as good people. So again, God bless, take care. Thank you again.